Greetings, my name is Dunwoody Mirvil, and I would like to thank you for stopping by this session. My hope is to provide a couple of tips to help your low brass section to make it to the next level in their performance endeavors. As you can see, we have quite a few topics to discuss, so to maximize our time together, let's get right into it. The placement of our tongue plays a pivotal role in our overall sound, volume, and how we navigate from the lower register to the upper register. Also, throughout this session, you will hear me mention how important a consistent stream of air affects the tone, and it plays a role in fueling our articulations. The appropriate use of our articulation in brass performance is pretty similar to how we talk on a daily basis. If we place too much emphasis on the tongue in our performance, it will only just get in our way. This is also the case when we get tongue-tied in our speech. Our mouth cavity is governed by how we formulate our tongue, and its placement can impact your student's musical product, which involves their sound, register, amplitude, and attack. The way your student shapes their mouth cavity by way of the tongue should complement the resonating frequency and volume of the tone being produced. We all have heard at some point a low brass player playing with a pinched, somewhat nasally tone. This is caused by the tongue being placed too high in the mouth as if they were pronouncing the E syllable. We as educators may have to take some of the blame because when we inform our students to articulate, we use the letter T, which causes the student to form their mouth in a closed position, which also creates a thin sound. The tone can be improved by lowering the tongue to an oo or ah syllable. By lowering the tongue, it can also help us to drop the jaw, which can increase the airflow to fuel our tone. All right, so we're going to switch gears and discuss how the tongue affects the student's register or range. For a novice or intermediate low brass player, it may be difficult for them to produce a full singing tone on their instrument. In order for them to get over the hump, they must be aware that they have to change the shape of their mouth cavity in which the tongue plays a pivotal role. Go figure. If you ask any professional brass player on how to receive a rich tone in the lower register, they will mention that it has a lot to do with dropping the jaw and keeping the tongue flat. To provide a good visual for your students, you can implement the yawn approach or have them to imagine blowing hot air into a cold window. Both approaches will cause the student to drop their jaw. As for the upper register, the opposite will take place, but the student must be careful not to clench their teeth, for it will produce a nasally sound. The student's volume is determined by the size of their mouth cavity along with the speed of the air. The space between the upper and lower jaws, along with the shape of the tongue, dictates the size of the mouth cavity. When it comes to articulation, the tongue can be the student's worst enemy by way of over-articulating. The most efficient approach to articulation is by using the tip of the tongue. This is done while the middle and back of the tongue is relaxed, regardless of the difficulty and speed of the musical passage. The student may use a lighter syllable such as da or na to articulate. This lighter approach may cause a quicker rebound when articulating. We spend a great deal of time on how the placement and use of the tongue can affect the student's performance. Now we're going to hone in on how articulation is interpreted for the low brass student. First, we will discuss the difference between staccato and the term short. When we instruct our low brass or even our full ensemble to play short, what are we really asking? When students hear the term short, the response tends to lean on the pecky side of things, where they will stop the air with the tongue. As it pertains to articulation, the air should always be the constant and the tongue serves as the variable. It's the same concept in algebra. If we plug a number into the variable, it will give us a different response. The tongue also provides a different response by way of creating staccato, legato, accents, and other articulations. I will provide examples of both the short and staccato approaches. Also, the novice or intermediate low brass musician may confuse the staccato interpretation with a marcato response, where they may over-articulate or hammer the note with the tongue. The student must remember to keep the tongue relaxed and maintain a consistent airflow. Also, depending on the style of music, staccato can be performed with a D or N syllable. To drive home my point on the difference between the two terms, I would like to provide a visual on the three components to every note we perform on the instrument. So we have the front, core, and decay. Here's my visual. This is my note. We can plug any articulation here, but for the time being, we'll just say this is our staccato. The moment we say play short, this is what happens. We just have a front. We just have the articulation. I like to mention to my students, there's a difference between sounding like a snare drum or a timpani. No offense to my snare drum players. As it pertains to tenuto and legato, if you were to take a poll and ask middle or high school students to define or perform both musical terms, we will come to the conclusion that their interpretation of both terms are to be performed in the same manner. But we as music educators are aware that there is a difference between the two terms, where legato means smooth and connected, and tenuto instructs us to perform the note to its full value. The main distinction between tenuto and legato is that the former is not connected to the next note. To help paint a vivid picture for students to understand the tenuto articulation, I correlate the term with the steam button on an iron. As you press the steam button, you can hear and feel the length of the steam as it straightens the material you are ironing. The steam button symbolizes the use of the tongue, where there is a small window of silence in between each articulation. When your student is trying to master legato tonguing on the trombone, have them to remove the tongue altogether. Incorporating this technique will expose the delayed slide movement in your student's playing, help discover where natural slurs can be used, and reveal how efficiently the student is using the air. Once this is established, the student can gradually add the tongue into the mix. By incorporating this technique, it re-emphasizes the notion that the tongue serves as the variable and the air as the constant. I will now provide a demonstration of the glissando technique. After performing the piece without the use of the tongue, while maintaining consistent airflow and accurate slide speed, have the student to identify the notes that popped by way of natural slurs and lip slurs. Once the notes have been identified, the students will have a better idea on how to approach this lyrical passage. The student can lightly tongue the notes that are not highlighted while letting the horn do the laboring by using the natural and lip slurs that are highlighted. I will provide an example of the finished product. Just as a car needs gas to function, the same could be said with our tongue and the use of consistent air. A great way to assist low brass students in learning how to double and triple tongue is to isolate the use of the back of the tongue or throat. Have the student to overemphasize the K syllable at a slow tempo to help strengthen the throat muscle. Once the student maintains some type of consistency with the syllable, they can add the front of the tongue into the equation. I will now provide a demonstration of how one should approach double and triple tonguing. It is important for the student to utilize the metronome, not only to keep them on tempo, but to track their progress. The student must also keep in mind that consistency and clarity is the name of the game. The student may use a lighter syllable to achieve a smoother double and triple tongue action by utilizing do and goo. There are also professional musicians who deviate from this pattern of triple tonguing by using ta-ka-ta, ta-ka-ta, or placing an emphasis on the ka on the downbeat by using ta-ka-ta-ka-ta-ka. The slide makes the trombone a complex instrument due to the fact that the student must synchronize the air, tongue, and slide movement to operate the instrument properly. A good method to help ensure the student moves the slide properly is to wait until the last possible moment before moving to the new slide position. Accomplishing this feat will help minimize the smears or microglisses one would experience when maneuvering in a particular partial. As educators, we have to be very careful with our instruction as it pertains to slide speed. If we instruct our trombonists to move their slides faster, it will be interpreted as to move sooner, which will lessen the time spent on a particular note. Again, we should instruct the trombonists to move at the last second, which will cause them to move their slide fast. So in essence, we are accomplishing the same goal, but approaching it in a different and more effective manner. I would suggest for the student to have a metronome nearby and set it to 16th note subdivision to achieve this goal. We are all aware that there are 7 slide positions on the trombone. We should also be made aware that most novice and intermediate trombonists favor 2 to 3 slide positions over the other 4 that are made available to them. We could take a survey and discover that students tend to stay away from 2nd, 5th, 6th, and 7th positions. This only leaves us with 1st, 3rd, and 4th positions. Believe it or not, the student would choose the E-flat scale over the B-flat scale any day because it contains just the 3 positions previously mentioned. An effective way to solve this is to have your students to focus on scales and key signatures, which will expose the slide positions less traveled. The more comfortable they are in these positions, the better the student and section will be when it comes to intonation. On an F attachment or tenor bass trombone, we have an extra 6 slide positions available to us when the F valve is activated, in addition to the 7 we have on the B-flat side of the horn. On a double-valved independent bass trombone, there are 5 extra slide positions available to the player, which will afford them with a total of 18 slide positions. That's a lot of freedom to reach the same destination. As we move the slide from 1st position to 7th position, the distance between each position increases by roughly 8%. This means that the distance between 1st and 2nd position will not resemble the distance between 6th and 7th. This is where the musician's ear and muscle memory comes into play. When the valves are activated, the distance between each slide position becomes greater, hence the reason why we lose a slide position with each valve activated. This table shows us the slide positions on the trombone and how the F side of the horn corresponds to the B-flat side as it pertains to the slide positions. This is a different table which provides the D side of the horn. This is only available to trombonists who perform on an F, G-flat independent bass trombone. By activating both valves, the D below the staff is available in 1st position. For my final topic, I'd be remiss if I didn't discuss the importance of clef studies. If a trombonist wants to be serious about the instrument, he or she must be familiar with the 4 clefs that they will see on Trombone Avenue: the bass, tenor, alto, and treble clefs. The following method books are just a few resources your students can use to learn the language of these clefs. Here are the resources that help make this presentation possible. I recommend these books without hesitation or reservation. I would like to thank you all for viewing this session. If you have any questions regarding the content I've covered in this presentation, please feel free to reach out to me. Have a blessed day.